Pokémon Next Generation, Fanfiction, Season 1, Episode 20, created by Marcus J. Anthony, narrated by Roch. Marc jolted awake, flashes of the SSN sinking, masked figures, and the harrowing image of that alien-like Pokémon, its piercing attack striking down Tapu Koko, haunted the edges of his vision. The echo of its roar faded as reality crept back in. Marc realized he was laying on Gyarados. Above him, Anthony was fast asleep on Gyarados' head. He started scanning his surroundings. Panic began to coil within him, until his gaze fell upon a Lapras, gliding gracefully alongside them. Perched atop it were Rachel and Emma. Relief crashed over him like a wave. "They're okay," Marc whispered. Rachel turned slightly, offering Emma a small, grateful smile despite the exhaustion.
"Thank you. Again. I don't even know how to. For the 100th time, Rachel, stop thanking me!"
Her voice was stern, but a softer note crept into her tone as she added quietly,
"Besides, I owed you."
Rachel chuckled, a sound tinged with both warmth and lingering fear. Marc felt his breath steady, anchoring himself to the fact that they had survived. Somehow. Anthony had woken up and stood beside Marc, and they sailed ahead. Just beyond, the towering volcano of Cinnabar Island loomed close. The Pokémon Center buzzed with frantic energy. Trainers filled the space, voices trembling with fear and disbelief. Marc, Anthony, Rachel, and Emma entered the Pokémon Center, their footsteps heavy with exhaustion. Marc's eyes were drawn to a large TV, where bold red letters scrolled across the screen. Breaking news. A reporter appeared on screen.
"Tragedy struck the SSN last night. The luxury vessel was attacked by an unknown organization, a dangerous new group that has emerged from the shadows. Witnesses report the attackers were accompanied by a formidable Pokémon, believed to be an armored Mewtwo."
Marc's breath hitched. The Mewtwo lookalike wasn't like the Mewtwo he knew from pictures and stories.
"Hundreds are reported missing, including renowned mythical Pokémon researcher Go, whose current whereabouts remain unknown. While the loss is devastating, the quick response from Mayor Curson and his elite team is credited with saving countless lives. Their bravery and swift action in combating the evil group have earned widespread praise."
Emma made a comment about being wrong about Mayor Curson, adding that he showed he cared for other people. "Doesn't mean I like him. Something about that guy feels off," Anthony said. Marc barely heard them. His gaze was locked onto the screen as the broadcast shifted to a new headline in bold, unforgiving letters. Mewtwo, friend turned foe.
Authorities now classify Mewtwo as a global threat. Eyewitnesses' account claim it led the attack alongside the evil team, raising serious concerns about its true allegiance.
The words pierced through Marc like a blade. "That's not Mewtwo!" he shouted suddenly. The entire Pokémon Center fell into stunned silence. Without waiting for a response, Marc spun on his heel and stormed out. Rachel called after him, but Anthony stopped her. "Let him go," he said softly, though his own face was etched with concern. "We need to call our families. Let them know we're safe."
Who's that Pokémon?
What is up, my elites? Before we continue on the Cinnabar Island adventures, I wanted to talk to you guys about something. We all love collecting, training, and battling with powerful creatures, right? Well, if you're looking for a game that scratches that same itch, then you need to check out Raid Shadow Legends. A game packed with over 700 unique champions to collect, train, and battle with. Think of it like assembling your ultimate team, except instead of Pikachu and Charizard, you're summoning legendary warriors, sorcerers, and beasts to take on epic battles in a world filled with danger and rewards. Plus, every champion has unique abilities just like your Pokemon team, so strategy is key. And here's where it gets good. If you download Raid using my link in the description or scan the QR code on screen, you'll get a special welcome pack, including Champion Rector Draft, a tanky support beast, an energy refill, a 1-day XP booster, and a skill tome epic to power up your champions right away. And if you reach level 15, you'll unlock Ugo, another incredible champion that you can find in the Champions Index. Oh, and here's a fun twist. Raid Shadow Legends recently added a brand new Alice in Wonderland inspired character. Imagine a classic fairy tale character reimagined with epic abilities and ready to join your team. It's a wild crossover you don't want to miss. Now, here's the real talk. By downloading Raid with my link, not only do you get an awesome game with tons of rewards and that cool Alice in Wonderland character, but you're also directly supporting my channel. It helps me keep creating the Pokemon fanfiction series you love, secures more sponsorships, and ensures I can keep bringing you the videos that make this community awesome. So if you enjoy Pokemon Next Generation and want to help the channel grow, hit that link, give Raid a try, and I'll really appreciate the support. Thank you so much, my elites, and let's get back to the extra special episode 20.
It's Hockey!
Marc wandered through the streets of Cinnabar Island. The air felt different here. Thick, suffocating, as if the very island was mourning the tragedy of the SS Anne. Marc didn't know where he was going. He just needed to move. The roads thinned as he drifted towards the outskirts of the island, away from the crowds, away from the noise. Eventually, the city gave way to rugged terrain, jagged rocks, and towering cliffs. As he climbed a narrow path along the rocky coast, Marc spotted a figure standing alone near the base of a craggy mountain. A teenage boy, maybe a year or two younger than Marc, stood motionless. His expression was distant, troubled, haunted. Maybe he lost someone on the SS Anne, Marc thought. He considered approaching, but before he could take a step, a voice cut through the silence like a knife. "You're Marc Masters, aren't you?" Marc spun around, startled. Standing behind him was a man in a blue trench coat. Marc's heart raced. "Who are you?" "Looker, head of the International Police." Marc was shocked. He had heard of that name before. Looker's eyes didn't waver. "I've been looking for you." Marc's throat went dry. "Why?" Looker stepped closer, his voice low but urgent. "I've spoken with Go. He survived the attack." Marc's heart skipped a beat. "Go? He's alive?" Looker nodded. "He managed to escape the SS Anne just before it sank. We were supposed to meet here on Cinnabar Island, but plans have changed. Go and Mew are now targets for this new organization. They've been placed into hiding, along with Go's family." Marc's mind raced. "But the news! They're saying it was Mewtwo, but it wasn't!" He yelled. "I saw it. It looked like Mewtwo, but it was different. It was pure evil." "I believe you." Marc gasped. "It's called MewZ." The name hung in the air like a curse. Looker glanced around, as if ensuring no one was within earshot, then continued. "A few months ago, I had a meeting with Giovanni in the prison on Abandoned Island. This was shortly after the incident with Ash and Pikachu's disappearance." Marc's eyes widened. "Giovanni? The Giovanni?" "He insisted he had no part in Ash's kidnapping, but he believed one of his former allies had stolen something. Blueprints he created long ago. Blueprints for a weapon. That weapon was the creation of MewZ." Marc felt like the ground beneath him had vanished. "MewZ was engineered from the genetic essence of Mew, Mewtwo, Zygarde, and something else. An unknown entity, maybe more than one," Looker added darkly. "It's the strongest Pokemon in existence, designed to be unstoppable. But it hasn't reached its full potential yet." "What does that mean?" "To achieve its final form, MewZ must drain the life force of both Mew and Mewtwo. But there's a catch. It has to drain them within 1 hour of each other. If it succeeds, There's nothing on this planet or any other that could stop it. Marc's knees felt weak. And it's not just after them, Looker added. It's hunting mythical Pokémon, legends, and even Zygarde cells to boost its power. Marc's mind spun with questions, fear twisting in his chest like a vice. Who created this thing? Giovanni said he wanted to destroy the blueprints, but they ended up in the hands of his old allies, Dr. Young and Evis, possibly others. Marc's breath caught. He'd heard those names before. A scientist and an evil boss with dark histories tied to unethical experiments and Pokémon manipulation. Looker's expression darkened. After Giovanni told me about MewZ, he was about to explain how this connects to Ash. But before he could finish, he collapsed. Collapsed? No health issues, no warning. He just fell into a coma. And he hasn't woken up since. A cold chill crawled down Marc's spine. This was bigger, so much bigger than he'd ever imagined. I know this is terrifying, Looker said, his voice softening slightly. But you need to stay out of this. The search for Ash is too dangerous now. Lives have already been lost. Is this going to lead to another war? Before Looker could respond, a voice called out from a distance.
Uncle Looker!
Marc turned to see a girl, around 17, jogging toward them awkwardly. A Psyduck waddled beside her. As she got closer, her foot got caught on a loose rock. And she tripped, crashing into Psyduck. They both tumbled forward, landing right at Looker's feet. Looker sighed. This is Caroline, my niece. She's in training to be a detective. Caroline shot to her feet, brushing herself off as if nothing had happened.
We need to catch our flight to Pallet Town. We're meeting with Professor Gary Oak. Oh gosh, I hate flying. What if the plane crashes? Or what if there's turbulence? Or what if I'm sitting beside someone with gas? I don't like party flights.
Looker turned back to Marc, his expression serious once more. Be careful. Focus on your Pokémon training. Leave the rest to us. And with that, he and Caroline walked away, Psyduck trailing behind them. Marc stood there, staring after them, his heart pounding with fear, anger, and something else. A quiet, simmering determination. Because no matter what Looker said, Marc knew he couldn't walk away from this. Not now. Not when the world was at stake. Marc turned his back toward the mountains, but the teenage boy he'd seen earlier was gone. He sighed and made his way back toward the town. Eventually, Marc spotted Anthony and Rachel near the Pokémon Center. Rachel had changed back into her casual clothes, her contest attire packed away with memories she probably wanted to forget. Thankfully, despite the chaos on the SS Anne, they managed to hold on to their belongings. Rachel said Emma got a Pidgeot taxi to Cinnabar Airport as there were no contests taking place on the island, but Rachel felt it was just an excuse to see her parents after the mental trauma she had experienced. Suddenly, a cheerful voice broke through the gloom.
What's up with the long faces?
The trio turned to see a young woman approaching them. Before Marc could respond, Rachel snapped, her emotions spilling over.
We're survivors of the SS Anne!
The girl's face fell instantly, guilt flashing in her eyes.
Oh, I'm really sorry.
She quickly recovered, offering a friendly smile. She introduced herself as Skorcha, adding that her family ran one of the biggest hot springs on the island. She thought the trio could take a break and offered them to come relax at her family's hot spring. The trio happily agreed and followed Skorcha through the streets of Cinnabar. As they passed through the town, her easygoing demeanor shifted. Skorcha's face hardened when her gaze locked onto an oversized hotel looming in the distance, its towering structure dominating the beachfront. Even the ocean seemed weighed down by the hotel's presence. Skorcha informed them that it was the Bright Sky Hotel, a newly constructed hotel that was owned by a nasty woman. She had been driving local businesses to the ground. Now, she was opening a hot spring spa within her hotel in hopes to put Skorcha's family out of business. Marc noticed the hotel was still under construction. It was taking over most of the beach and disturbed the water Pokémon that lived there. Some of the construction workers weren't treating the Pokémon very nicely, which annoyed the group. However, they pushed on. Eventually, they arrived at Skorcha's family spa, a cozy natural hot spring. The trio wasted no time slipping into the warm water, the heat soothing their aching bodies. For the first time in what felt like forever, Marc felt the tightness in his chest ease. Rachel then asked Skorcha about her family business.
My late grandfather Blaine started it. He passed away last year.
Marc's eyes widened. Wait, Blaine? As in the Cinnabar gym leader? Skorcha confirmed and added that she took over the gym 2 years ago, when her father retired to focus on running their business. Marc stood up, surprised. Would you battle me once I'm, not falling apart? Skorcha excitedly agreed after seeing Marc's 3 gym badges, noting that Sergeant Sarah is one of her best friends. Her gaze then drifted to the trio's Pokémon eggs resting nearby. She leaned closer, inspecting them with a curious intensity. Without warning, she sniffed at Rachel's and Anthony's eggs, her face lighting up with recognition.
Fire types. Close to hatching too.
She turned to Marc's egg, her brow furrowing. She couldn't quite tell what it was. She then instructed Anthony and Rachel to place their eggs into the hot spring, the warm water gently lapping against the fragile shells. Moments later, the eggs began to glow softly, cracks spreading across their surfaces. Anthony's egg hatched into a Growlithe with bright, curious eyes. It immediately nuzzled against Anthony, its affection clear from the start. Rachel's egg revealed Vulpix. Unlike Growlithe, Vulpix eyed Rachel with disinterest. When Rachel reached out to pet it, Vulpix snapped, attempting to bite her hand. Eevee, clearly offended by Vulpix's attitude, leapt forward, growling fiercely. Vulpix didn't back down. In seconds, the 2 Pokémon were tangled in a scrappy brawl. Before they could intervene, a voice called out lazily.
Let them fight! A good brawl helps let off some steam.
Marc turned towards the voice and froze. It was the boy he'd seen earlier near the mountains, though his demeanor was completely different now. Confident.
This is my brother, Keith.
I go by Blaine now.
Blaine? Like your grandfather?
Yep, it's my stage name, honoring Gramps. I'm gonna be a professional wrestler someday, with a full fighting type team. And I'm gonna save our family business by taking down the Bright Sky Hotel.
Skorcha groaned, telling Blaine he must follow in their family's footsteps by becoming a fire-type trainer.
Sis, you've been inhaling too much volcanic smoke lately. You can't dictate my dreams. I've got my own dreams. You can chase the Elite Four if you want, but I've got my own path.
Their argument grew louder until suddenly an explosion rocked the ground beneath them. The trio scrambled to their feet and quickly changed back into their clothes, already getting flashbacks of their previous ordeal. The group sprinted across the sandy stretch of Cinnabar's coastlines. Thick plumes of smoke curled into the sky, rising from the towering structure of the Bright Sky Hotel. As they arrived, the source of the disturbance became clear. Poliwhirl, Poliwrath, and Politoad were attacking the construction site with fierce determination. Blaine's expression hardened.
I knew this would happen.
Marc glanced at him. What do you mean?
This construction. It's been destroying the homes these Pokémon have lived in for generations.
Suddenly, a fragile Poliwag emerged from behind a collapsed beam, approaching Blaine. The tough exterior he wore like armor melted in an instant as he embraced the little Pokémon with genuine warmth.
This little guy's my best friend. Oh, when I turn 15, I'm gonna catch him.
Poliwag chirped softly, its small body trembling as it made distressed sounds. Marc instinctively reached for one of his Pokeballs and released Gasper the Ghastly. Gasper hovered in the air. He floated closer to Poliwag, his expression darkening after a brief moment of silent communication.
They're not just angry because of the construction. The workers, and even the owner, have been bullying the water Pokemon, treating them like pests. They've had enough.
Blaine didn't wait for more. Without hesitation, he bolted down the beach towards the construction site, his determination burning like wildfire. Anthony let out a low whistle. Gotta admit, I like the kid's spirit. The group took off after him, hearts racing. They caught up with Blaine as he confronted a group of construction workers who were trying and failing to control the situation. The workers looked annoyed more than they were concerned. After they said a bad word towards the poly Pokemon, Blaine snapped. His sister knew where this was going. Blaine dived onto the men and a brawl broke out. Even though Blaine was 14, he beat up 4 of the workers and the rest backed away. Then, from the shadows of the building, an angry voice sliced through the chaos.
What is the meaning of this?
A sharp chill crept down Marc's spine as an elderly woman stomped into view. Her face was twisted with fury, and even Gasper recoiled.
I've seen Milk Tank rear ends more attractive than that face. Ugh.
I'm Nastina, the rightful owner of this property. These pests have been disturbing my business. They should all be exterminated.
Marc's blood boiled. Skorcha's fists clenched. Even Rachel, usually the first to offer diplomacy, looked ready to snap. But Nastina wasn't finished. She reached into her purse and pulled out a wad of Pokédollars.
I'll give you each 100 Pokédollars to get rid of these creatures. My men I hired haven't shown up yet.
The audacity of her words struck like a slap.
Shut up, you ugly witch!
Nastina's face turned red. Before she could respond, the sound of an engine roared in the distance. A truck sped down the beach, kicking up sand as it skidded to a halt. Nastina's anger flipped into smug satisfaction. Marc's stomach twisted with dread as the truck doors swung open. Poachers. Emerging from the vehicle were the very same poachers Marc had battled back in Cerulean City, though there were more of them. The leader stepped out, flanked by his rough-looking crew. Almost as if they could sense their presence, Ray and Darius burst from their Pokeballs, growling fiercely, their eyes locked onto the men who had once hurt them. Marc's heart pounded. Those are the poachers I dealt with before. Earl laughed darkly.
We've got unfinished business, kid.
About time you showed up, Earl. Remember, you owe me for bailing you out after I bribed that judge.
So, that's how you're still walking free, Marc yelled.
I ain't here for small talk. I'm here for revenge.
Without warning, Marc's entire team burst from their Pokeballs. Charlie, Rowan, and Wilfred joining Gasper, Ray, and Darius, ready for battle. The poachers unleashed a swarm of poison-type Pokemon. Arbok, Weezing, Muck, and more were led by Earl's Crobat. The sight made Rachel tense, her lingering fear of poison types flashing across her face. But she didn't flinch. She stood her ground, determination burning in her eyes. Rachel and Anthony quickly released the rest of their Pokemon. Skorcha cursed under her breath, realizing she only had one Pokemon with her. The rest were at the gym, including her ace. She released her Flareon, which leapt forward with an impressive display of strength, catching even Eevee's attention. Nastina crackled and tossed out a Pokeball, revealing a nasty-looking Granbull, snarling and ready to fight. The beach became a battlefield. Marc and his friends facing overwhelming odds. They were outnumbered, but they weren't backing down. Anthony and Rachel exchanged quick, fearful glances at their newly hatched Pokemon, Growlithe and Vulpix, both trembling amidst the violent clash around them. Without hesitation, Anthony and Rachel tossed Pokeballs, officially catching their newly hatched Pokemon, keeping them safely out of battle. Meanwhile, Ray and Darius fought fiercely together, electricity crackling around them as they unleashed twin thunderbolts, striking down several Arbok. Eevee and Flareon battled side by side, forming a powerful duo. Flareon unleashed a blistering flamethrower, while Eevee used Sizzly Slide, both attacks scorching the swarm of Venomoth that surrounded them. Flareon gave Eevee a quick, impressed glance amidst the chaos. Anthony's towering Gyarados roared, protecting the water Pokemon. Beside it, Rachel's Starmie spun gracefully, launching sharp water pulses at a group of Golbat. Nidorino and Nidorina fought with synchronized precision, both using Ice Beam on Grimer and Muck. Above the battlefield, Wilfred and Beedrill had aerial battles with more Golbat and Venomoth, while Fearow soared with Rowan and Gloom, firing Razor Leaf at the Weezing. Even Gasper and Igglybuff joined them in the sky. Igglybuff showed no fear against the poisonous foes. On the ground, Charlie and Dratini fought valiantly, flames and dragon energy blending as they repelled wave after wave of enemy Pokemon. But then, from the crowd of foes, the hulking figure of Nastina's snarling Granbull emerged, using a devastating play rough attack. It struck Dratini with brutal force, sending the small dragon crashing to the ground. Anthony's cry of anguish pierced through the battle as he rushed towards his fallen partner. Skorcha's attention snapped to Blaine, who was shouting commands to the Poliwag with the intensity of an official battle, though the Pokemon wasn't even officially his. Despite the chaos, their bond shone brightly. But everything changed in an instant. The Poachers, growing frustrated with the resistance, turned their attention to the trainers themselves. They surged forward, fists clenched, delivering brutal attacks. Marc barely had time to react before Earl appeared behind him, his fist slamming into Marc's face with sickening force. A second punch followed. Marc collapsed to the sand, both his eyes swelling and bruised. One by one, the trainers were overwhelmed. Anthony and Rachel were knocked down. Even Skorcha hit the ground, her breath ragged. Blaine, though younger, fought back with raw skill, managing to fend off multiple of the attackers with quick, powerful strikes. But when Poliwag was hit and Blaine was tackled to the ground, the tide truly turned. Their Pokemon, seeing their trainers in distress, faltered. That split second of distraction was all it took. The Poachers' Pokemon unleashed brutal, relentless attacks. Fearow crashed from the sky, Rowan and Gloom tumbling beside it. Gyarados roared in pain, collapsing to the shallow waves. Starmie's core dimmed as it was struck down. Nastina cackled with vile delight, holding up the Poliwag like a trophy.
Look at this little pest. I think I'll have it for dinner.
Blaine's roar of rage shook the beach, his face twisted with fury. But his body was too battered to stand. Only 3 Pokemon remained standing: Charlie, Ray, and Darius. Their bodies trembled with exhaustion. They fought on, refusing to give up, but the enemy's numbers were overwhelming. Charlie was the first to fall. A brutal strike from Granbull sent her crashing into the sand. Earl advanced toward Darius. He kicked the weakened Meowth hard, sending him sprawling. Before Darius could even attempt to rise, Earl's Crobat swooped down, slamming him with Steel Whip. Darius lay motionless. Ray let out a heart-wrenching cry, light surging from her tiny body as she blasted countless foes with Thunderbolt in a desperate rage. But her small frame couldn't handle the strain. She wobbled, her breath ragged, sparks flickering weakly around her cheeks. Marc tried to crawl toward her, tears blinding his vision. "Ray, retreat, please!" But Ray refused. She couldn't leave Darius behind. The Poachers surrounded her. Granbull's brutal strikes landed first, followed by Crobat's relentless wings. Ray's body jerked with each hit, but she refused to fall, until finally, one last devastating blow knocked her to the ground. Marc's scream echoed across the battlefield, raw and filled with unimaginable pain. The group was shocked to see Ray had evolved into a Pikachu, her body sparking with electric energy.
Big deal. It went from a puny Pichu to a puny Pikachu.
Suddenly, Ray belted an enormous thunderbolt that shot up to the sky. Her power caused extreme winds that stumbled Nastina and the Poachers.
That's no ordinary Pikachu! And I want it!
Ray? Marc whispered, his voice trembling with disbelief. Ray unleashed a deafening cry, her body surging with newfound strength as she fired another colossal thunderbolt, obliterating nearly every poison-type Pokemon in its path. Only Granbull and Crobat remained. Poliwag found a burst of determination. It wriggled free from Nastina's grip, flipping in the air and slapping her squarely in the face with its tail before retreating to safety. Ray turned her focus to Granbull and Crobat. They lunged at her, but she met them head-on, bolts of electricity crackling around her body. She leapt into the air, her cheeks glowing brighter than ever, and released another devastating thunderbolt, blasting both foes into Nastina and the cluster of poachers. Darius was mistakenly thrown into the air from the force of the blast. Ray darted forward with lightning speed, catching him mid-fall. She eagerly tossed him into Marc's arms, her fierce expression softening as she made sure he was safe. Poliwag suddenly sprang into action, leaping high into the air and summoning a rain dance. Dark clouds rolled in, and the rain began to fall. Ray shot one final glance at Poliwag, their eyes locking in silent understanding, their tails slapping together mid-air in a symbolic tag-out. Ray's body surged with electricity, absorbing the rain's energy, and she summoned an awe-inspiring thunder. The bolt cracked through the sky, striking Nastina and the poachers with full force. They were sent blasting off into the sky, disappearing into the clouds just as the rain began to clear. The remaining poachers, terrified by the display of power, fled the scene, disappearing into the distance as sirens echoed in the background. Blaine stared at Ray in awe, his face filled with admiration. Marc passed the unconscious Darius to Rachel, and he ran to Ray, and she jumped into his arms. The two embraced, showing their bond had only grown stronger, and Blaine could feel it, a connection reminiscent of legends he'd heard about, Ash Ketchum and his partner Pikachu. As the group tended to their injured Pokémon, Officer Jenny arrived to the beach. Marc explained everything. Officer Jenny nodded gravely.
We were already on our way to arrest Nastina for money laundering. Looks like she added a few more charges to her record.
She assured them the hotel would be shut down and demolished. The Pokémons whose homes had been disturbed would finally have their peace restored. Blaine and Poliwag cheered with joy.
We did it! We saved your home!
After hours of healing and rest, Darius slowly woke up, blinking groggily as Marc stood by his side. His eyes widened when he saw Ray standing nearby, now a Pikachu, her confident stance radiating strength. And Darius was filled with both shock and pride. Anthony couldn't resist, shooting Darius an unkind glare. Rachel nudged him sharply, whispering with a cold tone.
One of these days, you and I are going to talk about Darius.
Anthony looked worried. He knew in his heart that his feelings toward Darius were going to be out in the open soon. But what would that lead to? The peace didn't last long. Marc, Rachel, and Anthony heard raised voices outside. Curious, they stepped out to find Blaine and Skorcha arguing.
You can't keep chasing this wrestling dream. You're meant to take over the fire-type gym, just like Grandpa Blaine. You can't catch Poliwag either. It's not part of the plan.
I don't call myself Blaine because I want to be a fire-type trainer. I call myself Blaine because Gramps was my hero. And he always pushed me to achieve my dreams, no matter what they were.
Marc stepped forward, his voice cutting through the tension. You're wrong, Skorcha. Marc met her gaze without flinching. Blaine deserves to follow his own path, and I'm gonna prove it. Marc stepped closer, his expression fierce. I challenge you to a battle. If I win, not only do I get the volcano badge, but you have to promise to let Blaine follow his dream. No more trying to control his life. Skorcha's smirk grew.
And if I win?
Marc didn't want to just put Blaine's future on the line without even consulting him, but before he could open his mouth, his gaze caught Blaine's, a fiery determination burning within him. He mouthed the words, "Do it. I trust you." Marc knew exactly what this meant and stared fiercely back at Skorcha. Then Blaine has to become a fire-type trainer and take over the gym in the future. Anthony and Rachel exchanged shocked glances. That's a bold move, Anthony muttered. Blaine and Poliwag's faces lit up with excitement.
You're overconfident, Marc. You have no idea what you're up against.
She reached for her Pokeball and released her ace, a towering Magmar, flames licking around its body, radiating heat and power. It was the offspring of Blaine's Magmar. Charlie stepped forward, her eyes burning with determination to prove herself as the superior fire type. The two Pokemon locked eyes, the tension thick as the battle loomed.
Where am I?
You know what? Cinnabar Island was overrated anyway. I will make this island my very own queendom. I'll call it Nastina Land. Oh, Tentacruel, my big old buddy. It has been a long time. How have you been? Oh no, please, no.